Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here to talk Seahawks football. Got a game preview show for you today. The Green Bay Packers are coming to Lumen Field on Sunday night. Keith, big game, biggest game of the year. Last week was the biggest game of the year. I think they just keep going all the way to the end. That game against the Los Angeles Rams looms large, but need to take care of business in the next two, especially with the Vikings after the Green Bay Packers. Welcome in. How you doing?
Doing good. The Seahawks definitely have to win one of these next two. You can't go 0-2 there. At that point, you lose the division. You might lose the playoffs. And so, they can't afford that. This is a game. It's a winnable game. It's at home. It's probably the more winnable of the two games that we're worried about here, and they need to go get the job done because it doesn't get any easier the following week.
That's true. The good thing is the Packers have lost 4 in a row in Seattle dating back to 2012. Seattle's improving on defense. The Packers offense is legit, top 5 offense by any measure. But Seattle's a top 5 defense now, the last 5 weeks. And again, by any measure. And so we're actually playing a little better than they are when you go head to head, their offense against our defense. I like our chances there. We do need to slow down their running game. That's their bread and butter. They are very much a first and second down running team. So you're definitely going to want to limit their opportunities on first and second down and put them in third and long and second and long as often as you can, because that's where it breaks down for them. They're susceptible to a little bit of pass rush. So if we can get them into those situations, I think we can get home a few times against Love. And then our secondary is really strong, and I have a feeling that we could generate some turnovers, which would be highly beneficial in this game, because I think
you've got to.
Green Bay has the ability to run the clock in this game. I mean, their offense is built to kind of take time off the clock, keep the ball out of the opponent's hands, and just kind of grind down teams, but they do have the ability to throw it around too. But I think Seattle's best option is to slow their running attack down and give Geno the ball, because when our offense is on the field, we've slowly and incrementally been improving the last 3 or 4 weeks, especially last game, just kind of put it all together. If we can have a game like that with Geno, I don't think this game is even close. But if the offense struggles and the defense struggles to slow down the run, this could be a long game and a close game.
Agreed. I mean, you can't let the Packers run on you. That is what sets up their offense. They run the ball really well with Jacobs, and then they do a lot of play action off of it. Love, despite having a bunch of turnovers, is having a good year overall, but a lot of that comes off play action and with the running game going first, and then he starts to pick teams apart. If you can stop the running game, I think you can stop their offense, because I'm not completely sold on Love as a top tier passer. I just am not, and I think that really comes down to, you've got to bottle Jacobs up. And if you can do that, I think you're in good shape.
Love's got a higher interception rate than Geno Smith does. And Geno's been throwing more interceptions this year than he has in the last couple of seasons. But also Love has more than double Smith's touchdown rate on the year. So he's a boomer bust guy. And you're right. Josh Jacobs, I mean, that guy had like 300 yards of total offense the last time he came to Lumen Field with the Raiders. This is the guy that's hard to slow down, and he leads the league in forced missed tackles at 58. Seattle's in pretty decent shape with this. Now, the Packers like to run up the middle, basically. They don't like to kind of spread you out and force things out for him. He's pretty much attacks the middle. That's where Seattle's actually really good at defending the run, especially the last 4 weeks. They've really funneled that defense into where they're trying to force you outside. I think if that's the case and we can slow this thing down, I think Seattle's got this game. That's a big challenge. I mean, Josh Jacobs is definitely a big challenge for them, but based on what we've seen the last 4 or 5 weeks, I have a pretty high degree of confidence that we can get this done, but it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, no, this is a tough game. And I don't think anyone should be predicting a blowout here. I mean, this is a tough game. And you look at, kind of the rankings, the Packers have the number 10 passing offense in the league by yards per game and the number 5 rushing offense in the league. If you put both of those together and you get, that's an elite offense. Seattle, in case you were wondering, is 3rd in passing, and they're not the bottom in rushing, which I was a little surprised at, but they're down there. Yeah, they're 27th in rushing. So, yeah, you put all both of those things together, it does come out that Packers have the better offense, and I don't think that's going to surprise anyone. Seattle's offense has been bad for most of the year. They've had one good running game, and that was this last week. So there's a lot to worry about in terms of that. But go look at the defenses, and for the last 5 weeks, and against some really good teams, Seattle has had a top 3 defense. You can't say that about the Packers defense. Packers defense isn't bad, but it's not at the same level as Seattle's, and so. It becomes strength on strength, right? Their offense against our defense.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If Seattle shows up, like I said, I think that we can get this thing, especially our offense, if it comes together, if we have a complete game again. I think our pass protection is really nicely matched against this defense. Their pressure rate is middling, if at best. They just don't get to the quarterback. I think their quarterback sack rate or quarterback pressure rate is ranked 28th in the league. And so I think Gino's going to have time. And when Gino has time, he gets the ball into his weapons into their hands and lets them do some damage. And I think this is one of those games where it might take a couple of drives to kind of go back and forth a little bit, but I think eventually Seattle finds success on the offensive side of the ball, just because I think the protection's there, the offensive line does its job. I think it opens some holes for our running backs, and we have a little bit of success there as well. But this game, I think, really at the end comes down to Gino's arm versus Josh Jacobs' legs. And I'd really like to think that we can get that done. Green Bay, if you look at the quality of opponents, and we talked a little bit about this the last time that we spoke, Keith, their quality of wins hasn't been great. The losses that they've had have come against legit teams, but their strength of schedule hasn't been that great. I really like the chances here, especially at home, Sunday night football, the way this team's been playing. They know this is going to be a dogfight. I think that they really come out and try to punch the Packers in the nose, like early in this game, and get out front, get physical, and play a style of ball that Green Bay doesn't like to play.
Yeah, agreed. And that, because if you force Green Bay to throw the ball a lot and try and keep up with you in a track meet style game, that's not their game, and they're going to struggle. And that is what Seattle's got to try and do. They've got to try and, get out in front. Yes, they still need to run the ball. We saw what happened last week when the running game works. And so I want to see more of that. But ultimately, there's going to be opportunities to throw the ball downfield, and Gino's got to make those plays, and the receivers got to catch it. And if they do those things, get a lead, they can really just kind of shut down the Packers by taking them out of their game plan. And that's got to be the plan. You got to shut down Jacobs early, get a lead, and then don't have to worry about Jacobs anymore because they're not handing it off anymore. And if you do those things, you're going to win if you're Seattle. So,
hold them to under 18 points. We've been doing that the last 4 or 5 games. If you take a look at the coaching tree, if that's important to you, Matt LaFleur comes from that Shanahan tree. He's also played under McVay before. Mike McDonald has shown that he's been effective against those coaches. And we've been just playing our best ball lately, like in the last 3-4 games. And I think that if that team shows up, this potentially could be a lopsided victory for Seattle. I just think that
I think the Packers are too good to let Seattle just run away with it. But the possibility's there. We're painting that picture, right? You don't run away from a good team.
Well, if it all comes together for Seattle, I mean, if Seattle's defense does what it's been doing and holds the Packers under, 16, 18 points, which is the pattern, the trend, I think Seattle can score 24, 28 points in this game. I really do think it could be a 2-score victory for Seattle. But getting ahead a little bit, what do you beyond slowing down Josh Jacobs on their offense and for us to be able to get Gino going? What are the keys to the game for you?
Well, to me, it comes down to Seattle's offensive line. They showed a lot of progress this last week against Arizona, but Arizona doesn't have the best defensive line. Now you gotta show it again. Was Lumea, was that a mirage, or is he really gonna be that good at run blocking? Can they keep Gino clean and open some lanes for the running backs? Because that's the thing that's been holding this offense back the most. Gino's has been inconsistent and up and down, but ultimately that hasn't been hurting Seattle. What was hurting Seattle is the offensive line and the just the mistakes and the problems there. And then they put together their most complete game of the year by far against Arizona. And if they can do anything similar here, you can beat this this Packer defense. It's a very good defense, but they don't have the star power on the back end. I could see if they can keep Gino clean, I could see him hitting a lot of big throws down the field because guys like Smith and Jigma and DK Metcalf are going to be able to get open.
So Smith led the NFL in dropbacks under pressure through week 9. Mm-hmm. It was the worst offensive line, really in the NFL. Since week 9, he is tied for 18th in dropbacks under pressure, which is a good stat. That means that the offensive line is at least middle of the road now instead of dead last. And that is a nice change from, you've got Oluwatimi in there. You've got Abe Lucas and now Lumea. And those guys are getting it done to at least a level where you're giving your quarterback a chance to run the offense, to get the ball out. I think that he was averaging, it was like 2.25 seconds before pressure was applied. And now that is, in this last game, it was up to 3 seconds before pressure was there. So that's a full 0.75 seconds of time difference to allow Gino to operate the offense. And that's huge. Now, I don't know if you're going to get that every game, but that opportunity exists in this game because, Green Bay has one of the lower pressure rates in the league.
Yeah. I mean, I look at that stat that you just gave me, and that's the power of Abe Lucas and the reason why it was such a big deal to get him healthy and back on the field, because they still have problems at left guard. And Oluwatimi has given up some pressures, and he's not been an elite player. But he hasn't been terrible. Like, he hasn't been a complete disaster like some people predicted. But ultimately, the biggest change out of everything that they've done on the line has been Stone Forsythe out and Abe Lucas in at right tackle, and that has made a huge difference. And now Lumea at right guard has stepped it up even further. So yeah, there's a lot to like going on right now. Hopefully they can continue it. I have a hard time just being like, yeah, this is who they are now, because it's been so bad for so long. I need to see it again, and probably again after that. But
Absolutely.
but
just like we did with the defense.
Yeah, it was one thing like, wow, that was a great defensive performance, but they've been bad for a month. So let's see what they do next week. Okay, now they've been great for 5 straight games. That is who the
Seahawks are the second-ranked DVOA team in the NFL since Week 10.
Yeah,
they're third in pass defense, and they're fourth in rush defense. That's crazy turnaround. That's a crazy turnaround.
Yeah, because they were down at the bottom before that, the first 9 weeks. Well, the first 8 weeks. Yeah, they were. I mean, they were one of, and statistically in other ways, the worst defense in the league. And then suddenly they weren't. And since week 10, they've been outstanding. One of the best in the league. So that's a big turnaround. Yeah. All we need is a little bit of improvement from the offense, and this becomes a team that nobody wants a piece of in the playoff.
So I gave you those individual. So I gave you the stats from week 10. We're the second ranked DVOA defense. Overall, if you count the entire season, we're 9th. So we've gone, I think we were 27th, Keith, before week 10 in DVOA. Mm-hmm. And we've jumped all the way to 9th.
Yeah.
Just based on the last 5 games, basically.
Yeah. And so
not only are we ranked first in the last 5 weeks, it's by a large margin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you don't move that far in 5 games, unless you've been significantly different than before. Because 10 games versus 5 games, those 5 games only count half as much towards the weighted average as the other ones, and yet they've still moved that far.
Yes.
Yeah. This team has been really good defensively. Like I was saying, if they get a little bit more out of the offense, this becomes a really tough team. A really tough team.
So reflect just a little bit and give me your favorite player of the year so far on offense and one on defense.
Oh, on offense, Smith and Jigba has been tremendous. I have just loved watching his development and his ability to get open at the right time. Yeah, that draft pick worked out real well. I know you were kind of down on him because they could have got Zay Flowers there in that same spot, same position, but Smith and Jigma has turned out to be exactly what Seattle's needed this year. And then defensively, Ernest Jones. I mean, I can't there's a lot of guys in there, but he wasn't here the whole year. So is he the guy that there?
He is for me.
Kobe.
I don't care if it's 5 games or whatever it is. It's like he's been the guy. He's been the impact player. He's been everything that you could ask for from him, and allowed everyone else in the defense to settle into their jobs, trust the system. Communication has gone, through the roof. He says that, he's talking to McDonald on the sideline like he's another linebacker out there with him. And everything's just working right now, but it works through him. Like he's the guy, and then everything else kind of works through him.
Well, he's the difference. He's what changed 5 weeks ago when the defense went from terrible to good. That was the change. They traded for Ernest Jones, and it's made that big of a difference. I mean, there's been other changes, and you've seen Kobe Bryant's play improve dramatically, and you've seen Tyrese Knight come in and nail down the other position there, and them getting a little healthier up front. But the one thing that changed that set everything else off was acquiring Jones. He's the real deal, and if they've got to get him re-signed. I'm just every day that goes by and we're not seeing that headline. I'm a little bit like, come on, guys, get this done, because I mean, you see the difference. It matters. It really does matter. And we saw that same thing when McDonald was in Baltimore as their defensive coordinator. When they traded for Roquan Smith, that defense went from good, it was already pretty good, to elite, because they needed that guy in the middle. And yes, they had Patrick Queen, but they moved him over to the other middle linebacker spot and let Roquan Smith be the guy. And that defense became really, really good. And they have that guy now. Like, you can't let him go.
They have that guy. I mean, there could be other guys that play like Jones. Maybe you could draft a guy, but he's the sure thing. And he's right in front of you. And you traded for him. You traded compensation. The expectation is you get him signed. There's no indication whatsoever that he's not going to be signed. It's a matter of is it now? Is it right after the season ends? Is it the day before free agency starts? I don't know, but it's going to happen.
Well, he said a lot of great things about Seattle, the team, the organization, the city. Like, he loves it here, and take advantage of that. He's happy. You're winning. He's been great. Get him signed. Just do it.
Right. And I think it's the centerpiece of a defense that you can build on and keep the continuity for at least the next 4 or 5 years. With Knight there being on a rookie contract, you can afford to pay him. You've got all of your safeties are fairly inexpensive at this point. Your defensive line is fairly cheap beyond Williams. You're going to make a decision, at some of the other spots to save some cap money next year. But I think you can keep your core for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so on if you needed to replace one player right now on this roster, who's just not getting it done?
Right now, out of the whole roster, not just the defense.
Correct.
Tomlinson on the offensive line, left guard. If you can get an upgrade there, that would be the biggest improvement, I think, for this team.
I would argue, yes, I agree with you. The other person that I was thinking of on the offensive side of the ball is Noah Fant.
Yeah.
While it seems like it's not as important maybe as Tomlinson, I think we're leaving a lot on the table by not having a player that has more upside than Fant there. For whatever reason, he's just not getting open, or he's not targeted or integrated into the offense as much. Now, I like Barner, and I think Barner is always going to be a complementary player at that position for the Seahawks. I think he's going to be solid. He's going to be great. He could be just as good as Will Disley for years to come. But I think a really nice weapon at the top end there would be really nice for any quarterback, Gino included. But I get you on the Tomlinson thing. He's been playing better as of late, but he's still the weakest link, and he's still the oldest player on that offensive line. And surely they will probably be looking for an upgrade in the offseason.
And I think the most expensive player on the offensive line. So, that's a situation there
until they extend Charles Cross.
Yes, and then that won't be the case anymore. The other player that came to mind right away, but then I had to pull it back, was Dre Jones, because for the first 10 weeks, Dre Jones was awful.
That's
But
what I
one
was
of the
talking
things,
about when I was alluding to the changes might need to be made next year because of the cap.
yeah, I mean, he's a guy that his cap number is absurd, given how many, his snap percentage and that. And for the first 10 games, he was kind of awful. Since the Ernest Jones trade, they're getting a lot more production out of Dre Jones. He's getting, I don't know what it is, but he's um, in the right gap a lot more often. He's getting to the quarterback now, which he wasn't before. They're getting a lot more production out of him. He's been significantly better these last 5 games. And so, the answer to your question would have been him for 10 games, even with how bad the offensive line's been. But no, not anymore. Now Tomlinson.
So we've got Nuaso back.
Mm-hmm.
He played 30 snaps last game. I would imagine he's going to play more. He came out of the game unscathed. Coach said he's going to try to ramp him up a little bit more this week. Who's he taking snaps from? And is it good?
Well, there's nothing bad about getting a player that good and getting them on the field, but he's stepping into a position that is full. It's a very deep position, very deep room. And yeah, you're going to have to find snaps for him.
Does that come from Mafe? Does it come from Hall? Does it come from Reed or Dre Jones? I mean, obviously, those are the players that he's going to pull snaps away from, I think.
Well, I don't know about Reed because he's more of a middle guy, but Dre Jones especially because he's basically been reduced to being a situational pass rusher. Although he did play 58% of the snaps this last week, so Hall's been good. He's had some struggles and some interesting decision making, but he has been good lately. Really, those 3 guys have been in a fairly equal timeshare.
And they're part of a defense that's number 1 in DVOA in the last 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to bring. What I'm trying to get at is it's hard to reinsert a guy, even if he's been really good. He's barely played in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just kind of handing him snaps because of his potential and his reputation. And you've already got guys that are playing really, really good and solid. And the team the chemistry is there. The snaps are all allocated and you're getting good results. And Nuasu, I think, needs to earn those snaps.
Oh yeah, you don't just I don't think you just, oh, guess what? You're a starter again. You're going back to your same snap count that you had before your injury. He's the 4th guy on the list, although I think you can take a significant chunk out of Jones and give him Nuasu and not have anything be worse. But yeah, let him earn it. Give him a certain percentage of snaps. This last game, it was 30% of the snaps. He took 21 snaps. That's about right, and let his performance dictate whether he gets more or less. And that number is exactly the same that they did in week 5. So in week 5, when they brought him back, he got 20 snaps, 28% total. And then he got hurt and has been out since. But now he's coming back, and again, they just, that was their number. Get him around 20 snaps, see where he's at, see where, make sure he doesn't get hurt again, and then build from there. And his performance is either going to dictate that he's going to stay at that number or a little less, or he's going to get more.
So on the other side of the ball, we've got good news. It comes with a little caveat. Ken Walker doesn't have long-term issues with the calf. It's a day-to-day thing. It's not going to be something that's going to keep him out for weeks, as speculated a little bit early this week. After that game, they did some more testing. Apparently everything came out okay. But he is day-to-day. And if he does come back, what do you do with the split count at running back, Keith?
If he's back this week, I mean, how back is he? Does he have his full agility and acceleration and everything, or is he, a guy that's slowed by an injury but still able to play? Because if he's slowed by an injury and still able to play, honestly, ride the hot hand. Let Charbonnet have the snaps, and if he's not getting it done, go that way. If he's completely healthy, he's the better player. He's more dynamic. He's faster. He's the better player. I think you have to give him the ball, but he has to be fully healthy before you make that distinction. And I think going to Charbonnet, letting him start, hey, we're just riding the hot hand, gives you an opportunity to let that play out as it's going to play out. See what happens.
Now, what if happens is Charbonnet again excels at that role and really dominates the rushing attack for Seattle in 2 straight weeks? You've really got some decisions to make. I mean, as far
That's
as
a great problem to have.
It is a great problem, but it brings up an interesting question to me, which is what style of running is best for this offense and best for the identity of the team.
Yeah. If Charbonnet comes out and does what he did against Arizona, if he does that again against the Packers, 1, the Seahawks win that game fairly easily. And 2, I think it's his job. I think Walker gets Wally pipped and, and let Charbonnet, again, ride the hot hand, because the running game was anemic. Charbonnet comes in and suddenly it looks good. And I know that an improved offensive line has a lot to do with it, but you got to let it happen. Interestingly, that after this last game in which Walker didn't play, and Walker also missed weeks 2 and 3, right? So there's been 3 games he hasn't played, where Charbonnet's played in every game. But as of right now, Walker has only played 5 more snaps than Charbonnet.
So there was
426.
There was a time I recall a conversation that we had in August, I think, about this running back duo. And I think both of us came out of the conversation in agreement in that as the season progressed, it would be interesting to see if Charbonnet ended up becoming the starting running back for this team, or at least the guy that got the most carries most often in games, to kind of be the tone setter and wear down defenses and allow Ken Walker to come in in moments where you're trying to get his home run ability to kind of step forward and give him that opportunity, not wear him down with all the carries, but give him select carries to really explode. And maybe
Walker
that's the way this thing plays out.
He's faster. He's more agile. He accelerates better. He's more dynamic. But Charbonnet can run people over in a way that Walker can't. And he's a punishing back. And he has his own speed. He's not Ken Walker, but we saw him run away from Arizona for that 51-yard touchdown. This is what we thought. This is what we talked about, but right before camp, is that sometimes you just need that guy that's going to go in and just pound into the defense and make their life hard. And then you pop one and you bring Walker in to do those kind of things. So I don't know. I really liked what we saw from Charbonnet in this last game. I liked what the offensive line did for him. Some of those running lanes that he had, Walker hasn't dreamed about.
That's so true. I got to give Walker credit. I'm not going to try. I'm not trying to diminish him at all.
Yeah.
And you could, in a dream case scenario, put Walker in that game against the Cardinals, and I think he probably would have had similar results. But it's hard to tell. It is hard to tell, because also Zach Charbonnet led the league in yardage after contact last
that,
game.
and that's what I'm talking about. Like, and we've said this a number of times over the course of the season. If you can't block for Ken Walker, you're not going to get as much out of him. You need a guy that can get more yards after contact, and Charbonnet can do that. If you can block for Ken Walker, you're going to get more out of him than Charbonnet because of he's just that much more dynamic. You're going to get less in it with a bad line, and you're going to get more out of a good line. And honestly, right now, I can't say they've got a good line. So I would lean Charbonnet. But I don't know. This is like splitting hairs. This is a great problem to have. Is it running back 1 or 1A? Like, they're both playing. They're both very good running backs, and so don't really have an issue with whatever this team decides to do. I really liked what I saw from Charbonnet in the passing game against Arizona. Blitz pickup, leaking out of the backfield, chipping guys on his way out to routes. He played a complete game as a running back. Just everything that you could possibly want your running back to do, he did in this game. And that's part of the reason why I lean towards him right now, because it was such a complete game for him.
Okay, Keith, play out a game simulation for me and a prediction for the Green Bay Packers visiting Seattle Seahawks on Sunday night.
So it doesn't happen the way that you and I talked about wanting it to happen, where the Seattle jumps out. I think Green Bay gets the first score because that seems to be how Seattle works. Geno gets a couple of responses, and then Charbonnet starts to really grind on them. And in the second half, it becomes Seattle's got the lead, they're running the ball, and the Packers can't throw their way back into it because that's not who they are. But the first half is a much tougher sled, because Jacobs makes life difficult for Seattle because he's a great running back, and they've got that running game working together. It's well refined in terms of the way that their linemen and Jacobs work together. So, but ultimately, Geno puts them ahead at the end of the first half, and leads them to a victory. And I think it ends up being a fairly high scoring game, which I know is weird to say for Seattle, but I'm thinking like 31-27, but 7 of those points are garbage time.
Interesting. So what you basically recreated the Arizona game, about 80% of it.
Yeah. not intentionally.
I'll take
not intentionally,
that.
But yeah, that is what I mean. That is, if Seattle does that, they can beat anybody.
I think that is so true. If they do that, what they did against the Cardinals, which is not a bad team, they can do that against anybody. And that's what makes this remaining season so interesting to me, and the potential for the playoffs, because if you play that kind of defense, if you play the number 1 defense in the league against any team, you're going to make any team struggle and fight for their yardage and so forth. And you give Geno and company just enough, they can do just enough to outscore the other team. That's what it's all about.
Yep.
I kind of see it that way. I hesitate on, especially in a good team like this, to kind of say we're just going to win by 2 scores. But I think this game creates an opportunity for Seattle to separate itself. Now it's been doing really well defensively. Offense really came together this last game, but they don't have enough data down to say that they're going to have a repeat performance. They need to repeat what they did to Arizona in order for this team to be respected and legitimized, and take this division as well as really be a legitimate 3 seed. Like the 3 seed is there. It looks kind of cool on paper. Hey, we're the 3 seed, home field, game, etc. But I really want them to earn it, like, and be a legitimate contender. And it's there, like the opportunity for them to actually really have an opportunity here to get to the NFC Championship game is right there. They just need to go get it. 4 games. Like if they win 4 in a row, we're 12-5. We are feared in this playoff picture in the NFC, I think. So I'd like to see them get there. I think they can do that against the Green Bay Packers. I think it's a little bit more of a challenging game against Minnesota the following week. So I really want them to go get this game, prove that they belong, have this team really, really starting to believe. And this is the team that they can do that against and get that done. So anyway, I think that they're going to do it. I'm not sure what the score is going to be, but it's going to be at least 27. I'm going to say 27-17, Seattle. And it looks like Keith had to run, so I'm going to finish this off. I appreciate all of you guys listening. Let's go get this game. Keith and I will be back towards the beginning of the week to recap the game and look ahead against the Minnesota Vikings as well. So you can find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL, on Blue Sky, same at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment, share the show, all of that good stuff. So until next time, go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.